Hello, I'm Bookface, and I am a mood ring. Today we've got a very obscure story, which means I can use this intro to give a little bit of context. So this story comes from the Marshall Islands and is recounted in Marshall Islands Legends and Stories by a man named Tonke Isaiah, which I'm probably mispronouncing, but I tried my best. Now with this in mind and my own bit of research, I'm pretty sure this is one of those cases of oral tradition that hasn't really been fully documented anywhere. So I don't have any extra sources. It's purely just this one narrative. It also means I don't have anything to clarify details or explain what this story means or any of the things in the story. Believe me, I got confused many times, which isn't helped by the fact this is from a very specific location with a very isolated people group. So context is going to be very different. I'm getting an email. Oh great, Krampus. That's really weird out of context, so I might just leave it in. But with that out of the way, let's jump right in. Woo! Now, much like my Epigon and Manbear videos, this initially started with me looking for a specific creature, except this one wasn't specifically named and is instead just referred to as a tropical demon. And while I mostly just embrace gimmicks for the sake of making videos more clickable, I do also love very specific variations on things we already know. So naturally, I had to look into it. Okay, skip to this point in the video if you don't care about hearing my research and design notes, because it goes on for a minute. Okay, so anyone who doesn't want to be here has gone forward, or just clicked off the video. Either way, let's get down to the nitty gritty. So, demon in the world of myth is a bit of a loaded term that can mean any number of things. The idea of a Judeo-Christian demon and demons in polytheistic religions or folklore are very different. So I started out looking for anything vaguely related in nearby myths. I found one, quote, demon described as being similar to an eel, but that was from the Yap Islands, which I'd never heard of. Believe me, I'm known to yap. But from the Marshall Islands specifically, I found something called an angelic, which, despite sounding like angelic, is some sort of generic evil spirit. Only problem is this has little to no description whatsoever, much like the creature in this story, and it's largely an unseen force. But looking a little deeper, I found another term, which is anish, which I don't know if I'm saying right, probably not, which refers to just about any evil spirit, but more importantly for my design purposes, also refers to sea monsters and poisonous fish. So that gave me a direction to take, and I rolled with it, and thankfully this left a ton of room for interpretation. This obviously led me to the very logical and reasonable decision to look up every single form of toxic fish from the Marshall Islands and add them into this design. This list includes, but probably isn't limited to, blennies, boxfish, crouchers, dragonet fish, eels, soapfish, gurnards, lionfish, longfins, porcupine fish, rabbit fish, scorpion fish, soldier fish, stonefish, surgeonfish, hey Dory, velvet fish, and wrasse. I tried to work in as many features as I could, but the design most prominently uses the patterns of the dragonet, spikes from the porcupine fish, and frills from the lionfish. I also use the fish monster from Sea Beast as a basis because I've been watching a lot of the Maneater movies, and it creates this thing, which you'll learn about later in this video, which I guess we'll just call the tropical demon. Love a good generic name. Anyways, with all that yapping out of the way, our story begins on the island of Wonbar, with two unnamed boys living with their parents. And much like in my previous videos that are based on stories, I'm going to give these characters arbitrary names, both to tell them apart and so I don't just have to call them Big Brother and Little Brother the whole time. So I'm going to call the older brother Maui and the younger brother Wowie. I never said I gave good names. I named the man bear after cocaine. Now, every day, the father found food for his family, since they were very close to starving. Yeah, Terrace will do that. But one day, Maui and Wowie asked him to bring home kut-kut birds, so they could watch them fight. I'm just going to assume the straight-up cockfighting thing here is just a regular cultural thing. That or these birds might be hunting companions? I'm thinking maybe both. Kut-kut apparently refers to the ruddy turnstone, and they are territorial, so I guess that works. I do think this thing wants to kill me. The internet hasn't even heard all my jokes yet. With that tangent aside, back in the story, the father went fishing, and when he was done, caught some kut-kut birds. The trap made from a coconut shell and the rib of a palm leaf. And I don't know which version I like better to visualize. The idea of this very simplistic Looney Tunes looking trap, or the idea of some ridiculously complex mechanism somehow MacGyvered from these two things. The father gave Maui and Wowie their murder birds, which I shall name Blaziken and Halucha. It's not necessary for me to name them, I just felt like it. Plus, fighting birds. Laugh. It also gives me an excuse to make these Photoshop things. admire. But before Dad gave them their starter Pokemon, I mean birds, he gives them a warning.
Never take them to the north side of the island.
Naturally, they ask their dad why he's giving them this incredibly ominous instruction, and their dad says nothing, because the mom basically says, shut up and listen to your dad, and they move on. I'm sure that won't have any consequences later. This is exactly the thing that happens in horror movies. The Harbinger brings the warning, but of course they're never allowed to explain themselves fully, or just arbitrarily don't. So instead, Team Maui Wowie builds a little cage for their birds, and go to bed laughing about how many birds their Kutkuts were going to absolutely massacre the next day.
The Pidgeys shall fear.
Or to be Oricorio.
The Oricorio will perish.
So these guys wake up bright and early, the bird-backed bloodlust that took them to the east side of the island. And as they ran off, their dad said,
remember, don't go to the north side of the island.
Just fully loading Chekhov's gun to the max capacity. Meanwhile, his kids just skip along, singing songs, until they reached the east side of the island and found so many edible birds. Any bird is edible if you're brave enough. The ostriches have had it too good for too long. So they released their squawking slashers, and the edible birds were not having any of it and take off immediately. Maui points out how very lame this is, and Wowie wants to go after them, but Maui was way too tired for his brother's crap, and also it was getting late, so they just go home. And the next day went much like the first. They get up early, bloodlust. Oh, I'm overwhelmed with bloodlust. They get up early, bloodlust overwhelms their thoughts. The Harbinger dad again reminds them,
don't go to the north side of the island, you little turds.
Maui agrees, and Wowie was suspiciously quiet. They found some more birds, and Maui suggested they take a break, and Wowie was no longer suspiciously quiet. He screamed about wanting to watch these birds fight, and the wild birds once again got out of there immediately. At least the birds know horror movie rules. Wowie didn't respond well to natural consequences, and decided to scoop up Holucha and sprint after his prey towards the north side of the island. There are 4 directions. You only went one of them. Though I guess it would be a pretty boring story if they made smart decisions. Maui briefly considers being an only child again, but sighs and decides to go after his brother. Eventually, Team Maui Wowie both make it to the north side of the island to find absolutely nothing. Not a bird in sight. Wowie is about half a second away from rage quitting when a voice comes to the bushes and say, hey kids, you wanna buy some drugs? What? No, that's not what it says. No, the voice says, I have fighting birds. Maui Wowie looked and saw
the demon of the north side of Wanbar.
And Wowie was psyched, while Maui was a bit more reasonably concerned. But Wowie craved violence and said his birds would kill the demon's birds. So the demon smugly scooped up Blaziken and Holucha and placed them in an arena with his own birds. And the kid birds absolutely slaughtered the ones owned by the demon. This is some devil went down to Georgia kind of ending.
I challenge the devil.
And won easily. The demon was shook. Wowie was bragging, and Maui was begging his brother to stop talking immediately. Unfortunately, Wowie cannot shut his mouth. And it was at this moment they realized the demon looked mad and was also changing colors. In rage, I guess.
This is the face of rage.
Wowie is not quite getting the issue here and asks why his brother wasn't happy. Maui, regretting all of his life choices, simply says he's not laughing. So the demon scoops them up and decides to deal with his confidence-destroying loss by eating some children. As you do. So he chucked them in a pit with a huge clamshell at the bottom for some reason.
Decorative, you tasteless cretin.
Alright, rainbow fish looking. Then the story immediately goes some weird Hansel and Gretel stuff. Maui and Wowie convince the demon not to eat them yet because they're too thin by showing the demon their scrawny hands. I guess they are near starvation, so they would be pretty thin. That's a depressing angle to the story. In some weird turnaround, despite this being an absolutely terrible situation, they end up kind of hustling this demon into bringing them an unending buffet of food to fatten them up. Our pattern continues with Wowie being absolutely thrilled and Maui once again dealing with the knowledge that he would need to lock in if he wanted to save himself and his annoying little brother. So he took the hairs off of coconut shells, which I'm guessing is the food lowered down to them, and wove them into a rope. This went on for several days until the demon decided,
screw it, I'm just gonna cook the scrawny kids.
While the demon was relishing his child cooking fire with all the glee of a cartoon villain tying a woman to some train tracks, Maui used his rope rope to pull a branch into the hole, climb it up in the tree, and send a basket down to fish his brother out too. So when the demon looked in the hole, he saw the kids holding their hands up as always. They insisted they were still too thin to eat, and the demon once again said screw it and reached out to grab his kids' meal, only to immediately fall in since he grabbed at nothing. Yeah, it turns out they filled that decorative clamshell at the bottom with coconut oil, and the demon was looking at the reflection. I think this demon needs to get his eyes and hearing checked. This is some Scooby-Doo kind of trick. Both of the brothers laughed at him, saying that they were slippery little birds. By the way, the demon kept calling them eating birds, but I didn't write it down, so it makes this comment sound really weird. They didn't just turn into birds, I swear. Then, in what I can only imagine is an incredibly snarky voice, Maui says, he's not laughing. And Wowie also says, you're not laughing, to the demon. And the demon yells,
I'm not laughing.
Which is probably the most comical interaction I've read in any myth or folktale ever. The demon demands to know how they escaped, and they tell him that they escaped by climbing the roots sticking out of the walls of the hole. But when the demon tries to get out, he falls down because they were running through their teeth. Wowie once again says, you're not laughing. And the demon once again responds,
I'm not laughing.
So the boys admit that they climbed up the rope and lower it down to the demon. And when he was about to reach them, they pour coconut oil on the rope and the demon slips off, slamming back down like a burglar in Home Alone. You're not laughing?
I'm not laughing.
Then the boys, I guess, decide to be nicer and lower down the basket and start pulling him up. And I'm seriously questioning the judgment of these children now. The demon reaches them and says,
Now I'm laughing.
but just as he goes to snatch him up again, they cut the rope and the demon falls all the way back down and cracks his skull on the stupid, tacky clamshell. Real decorative death trap he got there. So now, since the demon is dead, they decide to pillage any leftover food and bring it back home. The parents were relieved to see their kids since they thought they had been eaten by the demon, though it doesn't say anything about how hard they tried to look for them. Might be a bit more like Hansel and Gretel than I thought. But in the end, since the demon was dead and the north side of the island is where all the good food was at, apparently, they moved and lived happily ever after, and presumably filled in the hole with the demon corpse. So there we have another weirdly specific story. I love telling a story in a video that I don't think is anywhere else on YouTube. It's really hard to find, but it is very rewarding. Speaking of rewards, if you want access to all the stupid little extra things I've made in this video and my previous ones, like this thing, look how dumb that was, then you can join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You also get to vote in future video topics like this one. Also, my channel just passed 500 subscribers. Thank you for everyone who has subscribed and watched my videos. I really appreciate it, and I hope to keep growing in the future. With that, I'll see you all next time. Bye!